I knew something was wrong the moment I stepped into the lobby, and the receptionist wouldn't meet my eyes. And I mean wouldn't, her gaze was fixed on a crack in the marble floor. I hadn't even set my purse down when an Outlook notification hit my phone. Urgent performance review. 9:15 a.m., Conf RM4C, subject line in all caps, no body, no signature. Interesting. Let me set the context. I had just completed 12 consecutive quarters of growth. 12. We had secured the Hastings account 3 weeks earlier, projected to generate $28 million in revenue over the next 3 years. I built that deal from a simple napkin sketch on a Delta flight. But now, suddenly, I'm being pulled into a last-minute meeting as if I've done something minor. When you've worked in finance this long, you develop a sixth sense, a signal when something is wrong, and mine was clear. Karen's door was slightly open as I passed. She was whispering to someone with that artificial sympathetic tone she uses when letting interns go. The same tone she used with Jenny from accounting when she said her role had evolved beyond her scope, which is corporate language for replacing her. I took the longer route to the meeting room, not out of fear, but strategy. I needed a moment to think, observe, and notice who was avoiding me. A few people quickly looked away. One employee I had mentored for 5 years suddenly stepped into the copy room. That confirmed it. I went into my office and opened a locked drawer, my original contract. 8 pages of legal text, 3 of which I had renegotiated after Q4 last year. I turned to Clause 11C. I read it carefully, then again, tracing the initials Karen's, Brian's, and mine. It was still there. My protection. My safeguard against exactly the situation I was about to face. I folded the papers, placed them into my leather portfolio, stood up, adjusted my jacket, looked in the mirror once, and walked out. If you followed this far and are curious how this situation turned against them in a costly and very public way, consider subscribing or liking. It helps keep these stories going. Back in the hallway, I passed a mural the CEO had commissioned after our funding round closed. It was a dramatic display of innovation, though it didn't include the women who actually finalized the deal, just generic figures in VR headsets. When I reached Conference Room 4C, the blinds were already closed. Karen sat inside with 2 HR representatives who looked tense. There were no laptops, no water, no reports, clearly not a performance discussion. "Victoria," Karen said with a strained expression, "thanks for joining on short notice." "Of course," I replied. "I always make time for my team." She gestured toward a chair. I remained standing. A single sheet of paper sat in front of her. I was certain it was my termination notice. Karen cleared her throat. "We're restructuring, and unfortunately your position is being eliminated effective immediately. This decision is final and approved by leadership." Leadership meant Brian, who wasn't present. I nodded calmly. No reaction, just acknowledgement. Karen seemed surprised, perhaps expecting a stronger response. "I'll need your badge," she added. I handed it over and smiled. Just like that, I was no longer an executive at Archer Financial. Except not entirely. Because what they didn't realize was that terminating me one day before my bonus vested didn't eliminate the payout. It activated Clause 11C. That meant they didn't just owe me $4 million, they owed significantly more, including damages. I left the room composed, as if heading to lunch, holding the termination paper like it was nothing important. HR didn't follow me. Karen likely stayed behind, hoping there wouldn't be any complications. I passed my office without looking back. They would pack my things or store them away. That's how it works. Your value is tied to compliance, not contribution. But what Karen and Brian didn't understand was that I never operated entirely within their rules. I simply let them believe I did. Instead of heading to the parking garage, I used the executive elevator to reach floor 45, legal and compliance. I had spent enough time there during the Hastings deal to know who I could trust. The receptionist barely reacted until I placed my folder on her desk. "Tell Aaron Patel I'm here," I said. "Do you have an appointment?" she asked. "I was just terminated," I replied. "He'll want to see me." Aaron was an assistant counsel who had shadowed me during negotiations, a sharp professional who once asked whether he should move to the private sector or remain in corporate. I advised him to stay long enough to understand how things operate internally. 10 minutes later, I was in his office. He closed the door and looked concerned. "Are you okay?" "They terminated me," I said, "effective immediately. No cause, no discussion of the incentive clause. He frowned. Which clause? I opened the folder, turned to the page, and handed it to him. Clause 11C, paragraph 3, subsection A. He reviewed it carefully, once, then again more slowly. Did you include this during your Q4 renegotiation? Yes. Fully approved and initialed. Aaron leaned back. This clause is solid. If they terminated you within 24 hours of vesting, they owe the full bonus, plus 50% of your final year's base, plus damages if contested. Correct, I said, and Karen signed the implementation memo last December. I have the document, time-stamped and backed up, he exhaled. They assumed termination would avoid the payout, but it actually triggers it. I'm not here for revenge, I said. I'm here for enforcement. He nodded. Do you want this escalated to lead counsel? I'd prefer it comes from you. Quietly. You have the internal relationships. He agreed and began documenting everything. As I stood to leave, I said, You're not on the wrong side of this. The mistake was assuming I wouldn't act. Outside his office, I didn't head to the garage yet. I had one more step. I passed the pantry and noticed 2 interns whispering. News had already spread. In the elevator, I adjusted my appearance and stayed composed. They assumed the situation was over. It wasn't. I reached another section of legal and found Sarah, exactly where I expected her to be, focused on her screen in a small cubicle filled with institutional knowledge. She was detail-oriented and reliable, the right person for this. She looked up, surprised. Victoria, what are you? Didn't I just hear? You did, I said, handing her the folder. Clause 11C, annotated contract, addendums, signatures, arbitration triggers, and supporting references. She blinked. Are you terminated? Effective immediately, 1 day before vesting. She opened the folder carefully. Did Karen approve this? Yes. Page 6 of the implementation memo, digitally signed. She reviewed the clause. This activates upon termination within 24 hours of a vesting event. I made sure it was clear, I said. She read further, pausing. This triggers a payout equal to double the equity value plus base salary, benefits continuation, and indemnity provisions. They assumed I wouldn't notice, I replied. They were wrong. She glanced up. Does Aaron know? Yes, he's escalating it quietly, but additional review won't hurt. She nodded, absorbing the details. This clause is extremely precise. It was designed that way, I said. I leaned slightly closer. This is one of those moments that defines your role. You can pass it along, or you can take ownership and act. She straightened. I'll take it to Meredith, immediately. Good. As I turned to leave, she asked, what if they try to suppress it? They can try, I said, but it's already backed up in multiple locations with automated triggers. She looked surprised. You planned for this. I planned for outcomes, I said. I walked out of legal without interruption. No one stopped me or asked questions. That's how quiet exits work. People assume acceptance. But that morning, I wasn't leaving defeated. I was leaving with everything already in motion. And someone had already tripped the wire. Karen rushed into the HR war room like she was trying out for a breakdown, red-faced, blinking rapidly, already sweating through the silk lining of her blazer. She didn't close the door, just slammed her laptop onto the table. We need documentation now. Across from her, Shell from HR blinked slowly, like someone pulled out of deep water. Documentation of what exactly? Victoria's termination, something showing cause, a waiver, a warning, an incident log, anything. Shelley started typing with 2 fingers, scrolling through an empty folder as if something would appear on its own. Karen, she's never had a formal warning, not even a verbal coaching note. Her record is clean. There has to be something, Karen insisted. She's building a case. She left way too calm, and now legal is... She stopped mid-sentence. Shell looked up. Legal is what? Nothing. Just keep looking. At that same time, downstairs in compliance, the situation was already shifting. Sarah had passed the folder to Meredith, the board's lead counsel. Meredith read it immediately, her expression tightening. She requested a discreet but urgent review of Victoria's employment history, contract amendments, and all compensation triggers. Meanwhile, Karen was making calls as fast as she could, trying to recover ground. Jerry, it's Karen, she said sharply into the phone. I need every email tied to Victoria's Q4 renegotiation. Contracts, approvals, equity schedules, everything. A pause. What do you mean it's archived? Then unarchive it. Upstairs, Victoria was packing her office. Not rushed, not emotional, not hesitant, Just precise. She unplugged her dock, folded sweaters with clean symmetry, and placed an old fax machine, still kept for unknown reasons, into her leather tote like it belonged in another era. Her eyes paused on a photo on her desk. Her and her mother, 10 years ago, celebrating her offer letter with cheap champagne. "Be so good they have to notice," her mother had said. "They notice," she had replied once. "Just usually too late." Down in the legal review room, Meredith stood behind Karen, who was now writing furiously on a notepad as if handwriting could undo events. "Karen," Meredith said calmly. Karen flinched. "Yes?" Meredith placed the folder on the table. "Is this your signature on page 6 of the implementation memo?" Karen squinted. "Yes, but I didn't read every amendment. Brian said we just needed her through Q4. "You initialed every page," Meredith replied. "Well, yes. We were moving fast on headcount planning." Meredith flipped the folder open. Clause 11C. It doubles the equity payout if an executive is terminated without cause within 24 hours of a major equity event. Shell frowned from across the room. She was scheduled to vest tomorrow. "Yes," Meredith said. "And she was terminated today." Silence followed, heavy and immediate. Meredith continued, now more formal. "This wasn't just a procedural issue. It's legally enforceable. She gave notice of the clause. We have a timestamp confirming delivery. That makes this worse." Karen slowly lowered into her chair as if the weight of it had finally caught up. "We were trying to save $4 million, she said quietly. Meredith didn't soften. "You may have exposed the company to $6 million or more." At the same time, a calendar alert appeared on the board chair's assistant screen. Subject urgent. Victoria Owens Equity Clause Review. Priority highest sender, lead counsel. Upstairs, Victoria zipped her bag, took one final look around her office, and noticed something different. It felt smaller, like the space had already accepted her absence. She walked out carrying only her tote. Her heels clicked steadily across the floor. She passed framed employee awards, glass cases of innovation trophies, and polished displays of corporate success. At the elevator, a new marketing hire hesitated. "Victoria, is it true they let you go?" She offered a calm, neutral smile. "That's the rumor." "Wait, you were kind of the department." The employee shrugged, uncertain. "Then I guess they'll find out what it's like without it," Victoria replied. The elevator dinged open. She stepped inside, turned slightly, and as the doors began to close, added, "If anyone asks, tell them to read Clause 11C." The doors shut, and the unraveling began. Victoria was now seated in a quiet cafe 4 blocks from headquarters, one of those modern places with reclaimed wood chairs and coffee described in paragraphs instead of menus. She wasn't there for the atmosphere. She was there for 3 things: stable Wi-Fi, a clear view of the entrance, and distance from panic she didn't need to witness firsthand. She sipped her coffee and checked her phone. A message from Meredith, lead counsel. Subject, Clause 11C, time acknowledged, 10:41 a.m. "We are reviewing your termination file and contract. Your documentation has been received. Timestamp confirmed. Further update to follow. No emotion, no filler, just legal confirmation that things had escalated." Victoria opened her encrypted backup system. 3 contract versions were stored there, each fully annotated. Every signature logged. Every approval recorded from Brian, Karen, and members of the compensation committee, all timestamped and geotagged. She also had a recorded Zoom session from the final approval meeting. In it, Brian could be heard casually saying, "Yeah, whatever legal needs, just keep her through year end." Across the city, on the 44th floor of Arctran HQ, Meredith slid the full packet across a polished conference table. Brian picked it up lazily, like it was routine paperwork. "This again?" he muttered. "She's bluffing." Meredith looked at him directly. "She's not bluffing," she said. "She's executing." Karen was in the corner with her arms folded so tightly that her fingers had started to lose color. 16. "But if we already terminated her, you didn't void the bonus," Meredith said, cutting through the room. "You triggered it. The clause clearly states that termination without documented cause within 24 hours of a scheduled equity vest activates accelerated payout terms." Brian blinked. "We did that before it vested." "That's exactly the point," Meredith replied. She tapped the document. "You acted within the 24-hour trigger window. The clause doesn't only cover the vesting moment, it prevents last-minute attempts to bypass it, and you both initialed that language." She pointed to page 4, lower right corner. Timestamped 12:43 p.m., February 19th, during your Q4 board session. Brian's expression tightened. Nobody reads that level of detail. I thought legal was just being thorough. We were, Meredith said flatly. He flipped to the page, scanned it again, and visibly reacted. Jesus. She also submitted her termination file to Aaron Patel and Sarah Clark within 90 minutes of leaving the building. Meredith continued. Her digital record shows internal notification before your HR system even finalized her exit memo. Karen gave a short, uneasy laugh. She planned this. Meredith looked at her directly. She planned not to be improperly handled. There's a difference. Back at the cafe, Victoria leaned back in her chair. It was that rare kind of silence after certainty, when the outcome hasn't fully landed, but the direction is already clear. Not excitement, not emotion, just confirmation. Her phone buzzed again. Sarah Clark. Subject FYI, clause activity update, time 11:07 a.m. Meredith has escalated your clause file to the Compensation Committee and External Counsel. Things are moving quickly. Not everyone is aligned. Stay alert. Victoria replied simply, understood. Notify me if any retroactive edits are attempted. Version history is preserved across all files. She closed the message and opened a crossword app, focusing on a 7-letter word for structured consequence. Inside ArcTran, Brian was pacing. So what's the actual exposure, he asked. Meredith reviewed her notes. Base payout was $4 million. Clause 11C adds a multiplier tied to unvested equity, plus penalties for premature termination and arbitration damages. Give me a number, Brian said sharply. Roughly $6.5 million, she replied, possibly higher depending on recalculation at vesting. Brian turned to Karen. You told me this would reduce cost. Karen's voice dropped. That was the intent. Silence settled. Then Brian exhaled. Fine, offer her severance. Clean exit, half the amount, NDA included. Meredith didn't move. She already declined. Brian paused. Declined what? She never made a request. No settlement demand. No mediation. She submitted the clause and documentation. That's all. Karen swallowed. Then what does she want? That question hung in the room longer than anyone was comfortable with, because Victoria hadn't asked for anything, which meant she didn't need to. The conference room door shut with a heavy sound that made the space feel sealed off. Meredith stood at the head of the table, composed but firm. Brian, Karen, and the Compensation Committee sat across from her, all visibly tense. She placed the document stack down. This is not a misunderstanding, she said. This is a contractual liability event. Brian leaned back. She's exaggerating. She always does this. No, Meredith replied. This is enforceable exposure. She slid a page across to Karen. Page 6, your signature. Karen glanced at it briefly. I didn't review every clause. You initialed every page, Meredith corrected, as did Brian. She turned to the room. Clause 11C includes activation conditions, vesting protection, and constructive termination language. Brian frowned. Constructive termination? It means termination structured to avoid contractual payout obligations, Meredith explained. Legally equivalent to triggering those obligations directly. Karen tried to respond. We restructured her role. We didn't mention the bonus. That's the issue, Meredith said. No documented cause, no performance record, no HR justification. She was terminated 23 hours before vesting without procedural basis. She looked around the table. This activates the full protection clause. A committee member finally spoke. Is this enforceable? It's fully supported, Meredith said. We have timestamps, emails, backup records, and internal approvals. She filed her clause documentation 37 minutes before your termination memo was uploaded. Brian rubbed his forehead. So what now? We negotiate. No, Meredith said. You don't negotiate with enforceable evidence backed by complete documentation. The CFO leaned forward. Then what's the outcome? Meredith paused. Board review, mandatory payout, possible personal liability if intent is established. Karen went still. Brian exhaled slowly. She set us up. Meredith met his eyes. No, she documented herself. You made the decision. A long silence followed. Then the board secretary opened the door. The chair is requesting all of you immediately. Victoria sat on a rooftop terrace overlooking the city skyline, the glass towers reflecting late afternoon light. Her phone buzzed again. Unknown number. She answered calm winds. Victoria, a voice replied. Controlled but strained. This is David Halpern. She recognized him immediately. Board-level authority, strategic oversight. To what do I owe this, she asked. I'll be direct, he said. Did you intend to trigger Clause 11C? I was terminated, she replied. I ensured proper documentation. A pause. I've reviewed it, he said. It's one of the most complete contractual protections I've seen. Good design requires foresight, she said. Another voice came through faintly in the background. Urgent discussion. Current recalculation puts exposure above $6 million, someone said. David returned. That figure is now confirmed. Higher, depending on final valuation. Victoria looked out over the skyline. So you're not calling about the clause, she said. No, he admitted. We're assessing impact. Internal stability is shifting. She nodded slightly. Then your concern is operational, not contractual. A pause. You're not requesting arbitration? He asked. I don't need to, she said. The clause gives me full discretion. Silence followed again. Then David said quietly, They underestimated you. No, she replied. They just stopped reading. She ended the call. Not in anger, not in satisfaction, just completion. The executive conference room was silent in a way that felt unnatural, like the aftermath of a system shutdown. Brian sat at the head of the table, rigid. Karen avoided eye contact. The CFO stared at the documents like they might change. Meredith stood and placed the printed clause on the table. I will read this once more, she said, for absolute clarity. She read it. Precise and unhurried, ending with the compensation and arbitration terms. Then she closed the folder. This is not a negotiation scenario. It is a contractual enforcement event. Brian finally spoke. What are we actually looking at? Meredith answered directly. A payout obligation exceeding $6 million plus potential damages. Karen whispered. We didn't read it carefully enough. No, Meredith said. You read it. You just didn't understand its implications. A knock interrupted the room. The board secretary entered. The chair is requesting immediate assembly. Meredith looked at Brian one last time. This was not an oversight. It was a preventable decision. Then she left. Brian didn't move. Karen didn't speak. And for the first time, no one in the room believed they were in control anymore.